Hey, everybody, we're just going to give everyone a few minutes before we start. Hey, Megan, thanks so much for joining. We haven't quite started yet, but I know that you are putting together some slides.
Yes.
Send them to the HRC email, and then I can share my screen if that would be helpful.
Is there any way that I can share my screen and then that way I can go back and forth as I talk about the land? Is that
Yeah,
okay? That's easier.
Sure. I just want to hold them in our inbox if that's okay with you.
Sure. I have mine has extra bits in it that I'm not going to use. I don't know if because we had other ones they put together. So do you want me to is it okay if I email you a final one of what I used after?
Sure, that's fine. That's great.
Okay, sorry, not trying to be tricky.
Eileen, if no one else is volunteered, I'll take minutes.
Oh, that would be great. Thanks, Sherry. I just wanted to give everybody until 7:05, and then we'll sort of jump right into it from there.
And I just want to be clear too that I know that you have a lot of other agenda items and it wasn't like dedicated to this presentation of mine. So I'm really keeping it super short. I'm sure people have a little bit of background anyway. So it's mainly the concerns about the build, and then a little bit of historical and a little bit of environment. And they don't plan to tell an Indigenous history of Wakefield or anything.
Okay, no, that's helpful. And I think we're going to go a little out of order too, just so that you don't have to muddle through all of us talking through other committee related things. So no worries.
Okay, thanks so much.
Yeah.
And Paul's here too. He's my backup.
Oh, good.
He's been focusing on safety and the building and been talking to the city.
All right, well, we're at 7:03. I feel like we have sort of a big agenda, and so if other members jump on, we can add them to the list. And I just wanted to call to order our March meeting and kind of take attendance. So we have Reverend Elizabeth, we have Benny Lee, we have Sherry Oken, Nicole Jacob, we have Daniela Nabdalik, and then we have community members as well, and myself. I'm actually going to skip the check-in because I do think that we have community members that would like to sort of talk and do their 3 minutes. And so I'd love to be able to make sure that they have enough time for that. And so I will call on you as a community member. And then I just want to remind all the community members that you have 3 minutes. We try and be as strict as possible when it comes to that. Please don't be offended if we cut you off, but we will try and sort of stick as close to 3 minutes as possible. And then I'll call on you and we'll go through that. And then we'll jump directly into Megan's presentation. That way they're all sort of connected and it makes a little more sense versus the separation of the two topics. And then we'll be able to jump through the rest of the agenda. Does that make sense to everyone? Yeah, okay, cool. Excellent. So, Paul, I see your hand up. Would you like to go first?
Thank you. My name is Paul Rubicki. I'm on Parker Road in Wakefield. I think I've talked to almost everybody in Wakefield about the situation I'll try to be brief. I'm not sure how much everybody's been involved. I'm really opposed to the location. I love the Vogue. My cars have been fixed at the Vogue. My body shop work at the Vogue. So I'm 110% for the Vogue, but I'm screaming mad about the stupidity of putting it in such a poor location that is going to not be an inclusive school. It is going to have a fractured campus with 1,100-foot ramp, which is 2/10 of a mile for the ramp, just connecting the upper and lower campus. And that is going to be up to 8 degrees incline, which is insane. 8-foot wide elevated ramp that people are going to get hurt on regularly for generations to come. While we devastate the environment, cut down over 2,000 trees, have blasting sirens going constantly while we blast for weeks and weeks and weeks, devastating pollution and environmental consequences when we know the feasibility study said, don't even look at the hill. They said it would be a functionally compromised school if we were built on the hill, and it would be economically untenable to build on the school. And here we are looking at destructing this beautiful ecosystem, which happens to be the only forest core habitat that's left in Wakefield. Alexa, off. Sorry about that. So I have basically, from a human rights standpoint, think about a right of a kid to go to school without having to worry about it going up a ramp while it's raining, or it's thunder and lightning, or it's frost, or there's other situation, just darkness, just fear, just insanity to have to go 1,100 feet gets you to the basement of a 5-story building. So you have what they say is a 59-foot difference that you have to overcome. That's not accurate because you're at the basement and shop level. You still have 20 more feet. So it is the number of steps they did reduce from 102 to 69, but you can't overcome the vertical. And vertical travel is inherently more dangerous than horizontal travel. If you talk to a physical therapist or an architect, they'll all tell you that vertical motion is more dangerous. So why are we putting in 600 feet of new cliffs? Why are we going to impair the water quality and destroy all of that carbon that is currently sequestered properly in a beautiful ecosystem to build a subpar school that is going to have undue hardship for everybody all the time? And the stories that the Vogue have come back with about, they can't put a sidewalk up the main front entrance because it's too steep. Does that pass a smell test? It's going to be a guardrail on one side and a cliff on the other side. And kids are going to be walking up the front driveway because it's going to be the shortest way up to the school from the parking lot for about 2/3 of that. So I thank you for listening. I really implore everybody here to look into it a little bit deeper and realize that the school kids, generations to come, deserve better than a subpar school that's going to be economically devastating for people to pay $65 million. 20% of the budget is simply
Paul.
site prep.
Thanks, I appreciate it. Okay, and then other
welcome.
individuals, thank you so much. Other individuals, Paul tried to sort of make an HRC connection there, and so that would be really helpful if you can, as we're sort of going through with the rest of the community members, if you could sort of help us make this connection here, I think that would be really great. But Joy, I can see that your hand is up. Would you like to go next?
Thank you. Yes, I would like to speak. My name is Joy Pearson. I live in Malden, one of the supporting or feeding towns. And I would like to make my comments all around respect. Respect for the environment, respect for human beings, respect for different kinds of human beings, the indigenous human beings, the history of them, the students, the adults, the public. I have an ask, and that is for you to ask the students who are disabled or any disabled person, if they even know about this. The drawings, when you go into the school, don't even show that it's going to be on the forest. So if they don't know about it, let them know and ask them if they feel that this is safe. This is a safety question. You talk about things being ADA compliant. ADA compliant does not mean suitability. I have personal experience of something that was offered to me when I needed some ADA compliant because of a broken arm, and it was not suitable at all. So ask disabled and ask them to see where this is actually going to be. And if they think that there are any problems, let them know the 1,100 foot ramp. Let them know about the 2 different elevators, and that if one goes out, ask them about emergencies. If there are emergencies, what are they going to do? I have an ask for you. Well, actually, respect for climate change. As Paul was saying, CO2 emissions. More and more communities, federal and state, are going to reduce CO2 emissions, not increase them. Why? Why are you increasing CO2 emissions with blasting and by cutting of trees? Why not build? This is a question for you to ask people. Ask them if they would rather have this built on the football field. Ask the town people that. I don't think they were ever asked. They were just asked if they would approve the borrowing of money. Ask them if they would be able to do that, instead of just have 1 or 2 people decide that this is going to be on the hilltop. So my ask is for you to ask disabled people about this, and ask all townspeople, if not others, if they would rather have it built on the football field. We have about almost
Thanks, Joy.
6,000 people who disagree with this.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Let's see, Jennifer, I can see you in the room. Would you like to take your 3 minutes?
Sure. My comments mostly have to do with,
Will you just introduce yourself and say where you're
sure.
from, please?
Yeah, Jennifer Fanning. I'm a Wakefield resident, live on Pheasantwood Drive. My concerns that about the project, I really share all of the concerns that other people are talking about today, but I'll talk about the transparency of the project. I submitted a open meeting law complaint to the school building committee yesterday. So there's a process that they'll have to go through to respond to that complaint. But that complaint details how meeting notices about the school building committee's meetings were not posted for a long period of time. They weren't posted consistently. They didn't include agendas. Meeting minutes were not posted on the district's town and city websites, which made it difficult for the public to know that the meetings were happening, what the stage of the project was, what the content of the meetings was, what votes were taking place. Those were not included in agendas until very, very recently. The agendas didn't include announcements of upcoming votes. And I think that's the reason why there's so much public input at this late stage. The project has said that the process has been public and transparent and open, but I think my complaint documents that that's not the case, and that they'll have the opportunity to respond to that. But overall, and I've talked with a lot of people in the public about the project, and I think people, really diverse people with kind of diverse priorities and values, take issue with aspects of this project, whether it's the environmental destructiveness, or the lack of accessibility, safety concerns, the archaeological concerns, sort of the costs and the unnecessary costs associated with the blasting. So I'll say that my impression of this overall process is that it's, seems to be led by, a couple of people who are pursuing what they want, through this project. And sort of the public's concerns are not being sort of considered or heard. And, I don't really think that's the way projects like this are supposed to work when they're paid for by taxpayer dollars, and they're supposed to serve the public good. So that's my overall concern. I'll say what I found, or what motivated me to learn more about this project was, when I initially heard that the forest would be cut down for the school, I initially was willing to give the school the benefit of the doubt and thought, well, there must be a good reason for it. But then when I heard about, how difficult the school would be to access, for people with kind of diverse abilities, that's when I realized, this is really not for the greater good. This is really sort of a wasteful and destructive project. And that's what really got me very concerned about it. That's really all I have to say. Thank you for listening. I guess I'll say my request is that I hope that you'll sort of amplify what you hear from the public, because I really don't think that the public has had a venue for that until very late in the project, really too late in the project. So I hope that you'll sort of amplify what you hear today.
Great, thank you so much.
Can I ask Jennifer to please just spell her last name for our records?
Fanning, F as in Frank, ANNING.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Paul, I know that you're here as a support for Megan, but I think you were probably one of the first people here. Would you like to take 3 minutes?
Paul already did his 3 minutes, didn't he?
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
did he? I'm sorry.
Oh, yeah. Joseph is the
Sorry
other
about
person.
that. And then Joseph.
I'm honored to get another 3 minutes.
I
I'd
know,
settle for
right?
one.
I looked right at Joseph and then said out loud, Paul. Joseph, how about you? No, okay. KJ,
I came late, so I came while Jennifer was talking, so I'm not really sure.
oh, sure, I'll give you the update. So we're opening our session for public participation. You have 3 minutes if you're interested. It sounds like the topic this evening is in regards to the vocational school.
Yeah.
If you're just here to listen, that's totally fine. I just want to make sure that we get everyone that's interested.
I'll try. So I am against blowing up the forest and the habitats. I helped to document the whippoorwill last summer. We submitted documents to Heritage Hub. It's a species of greatest conservation need. But there's so much more than that. This project, you can't, if you look at all the available space, all of the available acres of fields that they have to put this school, you can't understand why they are choosing to blow up the forest. It's not a hard decision. It's not like they looked at all of the sites would accommodate a school for 1,600 students. All of the sites are big enough for that capacity and would meet the educational need. Even MSBA knows it. But yet they choose that. And the access is really problematic. The stewardship of taxpayer dollars, the site location, honestly, Wakefield has a history of wanting to develop all that land, but no one would do it. They can't afford to, and they even put it out for developers. You can build here and you can pay us as the lessers. The pay us would be Wakefield and NEMT, Northeast Metro Tech. And they couldn't find a developer to do it because it's just would cost so much money. But this is a once in a lifetime opportunity to get 11 other towns to pay for it. And it's really kind of shocking. And but it's just wrong so many ways. I don't understand. I was at the Disability Commission meeting when they showed the access to the school, and then they showed their inspiration. And their inspiration were places where people go to hike 5 miles. This is daily access for kids every day. You know, internships, work study, sports, phys ed, everything you do up and down. So I just don't understand it. I think it's wrong. Thanks.
KJ, could you please also spell your last name and name the town you live in?
Oh, Johnson, Johnsson. I live in Walden. Thank you for hosting us.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that I've missed? Nancy, I think it looks like you joined, Sasha as well. No, okay. All right, that's great. So our public participation has ended. And so typically what that means is we will then sort of continue on with our agenda. In this case, we're going to jump ahead a little bit and talk about, we've invited Megan to come and talk about sort of the community concerns, and she has a presentation that she's going to go through. That also means that unless we sort of choose you or call on you, that's sort of where public participation ends. At the end of that presentation, then the community, the board members will have a brief discussion about whether maybe we need to create a subcommittee to further discuss this. But we won't continue sort of to take up more time in this meeting this afternoon. That's how long the day's been, but I think it's still the afternoon. And so I just want to be really clear about sort of what we're going to do in this meeting, and then we'll take it away if we need to create a subcommittee and kind of go from there. We'll go through the rest of our agenda, and then we'll come back if we need to. Does that make sense? Yeah. Okay, great. All right, Megan, thank you so much for joining us. I'm going to let you share. I'm not sure if you can share your screen. Let me see.
You go into participants or share screen controls. I think that it's there.
I think that might be one of the things that the structure doesn't allow.
I think that's
Oh,
right.
really?
Yeah, because it then extends it to everyone in the room, and because we have community members as well. So if you want to send it to me, I'm happy to share it.
Okay, sure. I was gonna take the luxury of skipping over to a letter too at the end, because I got an archaeologist who was able to speak. He submitted a letter that he wanted me to read to you.
Okay.
So I guess if you can bear with me, I'll just send you a couple of documents.
Yeah, that'd be great.
I've never presented through someone else, so this will be the first time.
Don't worry, I'm pretty bright. I can flip through the PowerPoint.
Oh, I'm
no problem.
sure it'll be more me. I have to keep up. Okay, so let's see. So if I can share my presentation, can I type your email in, Irene?
Try sending it directly to the Wakefield Human Rights Commission. So that's whrc@wakefield.ma.us.
Okay, sorry about this.
No worries.
1 second. Oh. And I guess I will.
Thanks for everybody's patience.
Yes, thank you everyone for your patience.
Let me know when you've sent it.
One more second. There's actually 2 attachments, but they're just for like pop-ups, so it's not a lot. I've just tried my best to reference with actual public records. And it's Wakefield HRC at Gmail. Is that it? No. Wakefield Human Rights WHRC at wakefield.ma.us.
That's great.
Okay. And that is sent. So it should just come up. The presentation itself would be a link, and then there's 2 attachments.
You have my personal email as well. Do you want to do the same thing there and we'll just see whichever comes up faster?
Sure.
Here we go. Can everyone see my screen? Yeah, okay, great. Thanks. Megan, feel free to let me know when you want me to go forward.
Okay, sure. Do you have a way to make it to do it so it's like full screen? It's not totally necessary, but I think it's like play slideshow. It might be in the file. Okay, so if you could just go back one.
Yeah,
Full screen now?
there you go. Yeah, it is.
Yes, looks great. Thank you so much.
Great.
So we all know we're talking about the VOC, and then if you want to go to the next slide. So this is one of the things that I get to talk about, and they say, well, it was about over 80%. It was a landslide. I think they say 86% of voters approved it. But if you actually look at the numbers, it was a single issue vote in a special election, and of 12 towns, only 9,043 people came out to vote. So that's our overwhelming approval. And at the time of the vote, if you want to go to the next slide, at the time of the vote was not for the site. The vote was for the money. So the site choice had already been decided. December 2020, the school committee had gone to the forested hilltop site, and MSBA approved that site in February 2021, and January 12th of 2022, it was printed in the Revere Journal that the school was going to go on the playing fields. And that was a quote from the Revere rep to the school committee, Anthony Caggiano. As late as October, I believe it, yeah, it's October 2022, the Globe still mentions that it's going on the playing fields. So, and during the pandemic and during some of those meetings that Jennifer mentioned, there weren't meeting minutes being released. A lot of people didn't know that the process was there was a site choice process going on. I think people thought they were voting for the money and then at some point they'd be re-included for a site choice, but it was already chosen and approved in 2020 and 2021. And then if you could go to the next slide, please. So here is 2016, looking at 3 different sites. Actually, they looked at more than 3 different sites, but there were 3 main options that they thought were the best. They thought renovation wasn't that great of an option. And Doran Whittier, architects who are very well known and held to much esteem, said that C1 and C2 were better site options. C3 is the forested hilltop site. Doran Whittier had built a school on a hill with the same project architects PMA in 2010 in North Reading, and ended up in litigation because it went over budget from the blasting. And Doran Whittier, I don't know, but this is a similar situation, build on a rock or not. And they said they advised not to. The forest is a very special forest. It's part of the biomap, which is the future of conservation in Mass, recognized by the state. So it's not just any old forest or clearing any land. It happens to be land that hasn't been plowed or paved or touched in a very long time. And if you can go to the next slide. And there's one above it, I think, is there? Okay, here we go. So this is how close we are to Breakheart. So the power line is where the school territory ends. If you can see the power line cut there. And this forest was part of Breakheart until 1965 when it was sold to the school, and then it was built on the school property in 1968. There was a pre-existing operation on the school site, but just like on the school site itself, not on the forest site, and that was called the Wakefield Poor Farm. And Hemlock Road itself in that section, I believe, dates back to 1600. Other than that, it was used as hunting camps. It was also used as community woodlots for people in the surrounding area. And if you see, I don't know if you can see this designation, Castle Rock, or some of these high points, those are considered to be view sheds, which tend to be very historically significant. And from those points, you can actually see Boston Harbor. And it was known that Native American sites might have some relationship to view sheds. And historically, people have also built on heights or tried to live on heights because it gave them an advantage over the enemy. If you could go to the next one. So this is how dense the forest is. And we tend to hear that it's not that dense, but it actually is a well-forested area. You could go to the next slide. And this is, so you've just seen where the forest is, and this is where they're going to build the school. So this outline, this jagged outline that's presented would be the outline of the new campus. They would be leaving some trees, but they would be doing a lot of clearing. If you can go to the next one. And those view sheds that I mentioned are also historic preservation areas. So actually, if you can go up one more, I can speak to that a little bit. This Eagle Rock, and then I think it's a little bit lower than that to the left is Castle Rock. Those and areas of Breakheart are on the National Historic Register, and so are the pathways in Breakheart. So they're actually listed for historic preservation. And the vocational school, part of, but not that much of the property, is part of those Breakheart pathways. So part of the school itself is actually listed on the National Historic Register. And I got a lot of the information that I learned about the history of that area and its significance, actually not through necessarily the Wakefield documents, but for the mentions of the Wakefield areas in the Saugus documents on the Massachusetts Historical website or the MACRIS database that anybody can access. And if you could go to the next slide. So this is a little bit about biodiversity. It's rare species and forest core habitat, which is like 2 different designations. And it identifies areas that are critical for long-term persistence of rare species in their ecosystems, critical natural landscape being landscape that blocks minimally impacted by development, buffers to core habitat, which enhance connectivity and resilience. In an ideal ecological, pro-ecological situation, you would want as much continuous habitat or contiguous habitat, because when you end up cutting up forest land, it stresses out the forest, the carbon sink that the forest and actually the wetlands provide. The wetlands actually provide more, sequester more carbon than forest. And when you keep these areas intact, they work better. If you take part of it away, the area around it will try to absorb more carbon than it can. So the loss of forest ends up impacting the other areas around it. Insects, plants co-evolve, support a complex food web of native birds, reptiles, amphibians, mammals. They have special needs and they can't be relocated. The forest itself has 5 different habitats with a 6th on its border. And protecting forest and rare species ensures that rare wildlife will continue to thrive in Wakefield, preserving biodiversity and treasured national recreation area. I can't help but think where this is a state designation that's also entitled The Future of Conservation, and with somebody like Maura Healy in office with now a climate chief, that we would actually at some point maybe while they're in office see protections for these things in elevation. Can you, next slide, please? So here's some more from the biomap. So you can actually go to the biomap website, Google Biomap Mass, and you can look at different areas. So this is our forest core habitat. You can go to the next one. And for rare species, Natural Heritage and Endangered Species Program designation. This is from an environmental consulting company related to the project, and it says that it was not listed as estimated habitat of rare wildlife and priority habitat of rare species. I'm sure someone else could speak to this better than me. There are actually 2 endangered species on the property, and it would be the eastern whippoorwill and the Hence's red-bellied tiger beetle. And they came onto the endangered species list, which has different designations, like different levels. They came on after the project notification form was submitted. So it doesn't make them not threatened or a species of critical concern. They just didn't get in before the project notification form was submitted. And if they were federal species, they would be grandfathered in, but they're state species, so they are not. So now we're going to no Native American sensitive areas. The Pawtucket, who are now mostly represented by the Massachusetts, were an Algonquin speaking tribe that lived in the Saugus River, spending summers near the coast, moving inland during winter. I don't know if anyone recognizes this, but it's from the Breakheart historical take yourself on a tour write-ups. And the Saugus River is on the northern border of the school, and it's known for historical sites. The sustainable relationship between humans and their environment existed for thousands of years, allowing communities to prosper without depleting natural resources. And even today, Indigenous views on land are based on respect and stewardship, a perspective that still has much to teach us. In December of last year, myself and another person walked the forest site with Sagamore Ferry's Gray, the Massive Ferris Gray of the Massachusetts tribe. And within about an hour, he saw things that made him think that it could be an actual site. There was a partial site review or a partial location review in the mid-60s. It was never completed, and we are not historians and we do not have access to that data.
Megan, before you go any further, do you want to share either by email or probably by email, the individual
Sure.
that you just mentioned who walked with you through the forest to say that this is potentially an Indigenous land and that we should be thinking about it? I think I I think what I'm struggling a little bit here with, and hopefully you sort of cover that in the rest of this dialogue, is the connection between the Human Rights Commission and the VOC itself. And so this feels important to me, like where you're discussing this right now, sort of the indigenous lands. But it would be really helpful if you could provide us with the person who's sort of identifying that, and then we can sort of connect them with the VOC to continue on with that conversation. I
The
think that would be
vocational
great.
school is not interested. And
Yeah.
they're in the newspaper that it's not a site. And there's
So
been,
if you can provide us with the name of that individual, that would be really helpful. And then again, we can sort of have a further discussion about it. Are there
One
more-
thing, Eileen, one thing that I have understood is that Sagamore Gray indicated that although this site does show like obvious visible signs of having been like being a heritage site for the Massachusetts people, the Massachusetts tribe at Ponkapog just doesn't have the bandwidth to be doing the kind of intensive and like honestly harmful to them advocacy that's required. Like when you go to someone and say, this is my people's ancestral homeland, please don't build on it, and they're like, go away, we don't want to talk to you. Like there are like very real
Sure, it's traumatizing.
like
Absolutely.
yeah, very real harms that come from that. Anyway, so I believe that Sagamore Gray has said that he personally, I don't know, but like that the Massachusetts tribe at Ponkapog doesn't have the bandwidth really to be dealing with this, and you know, wanting still for there to be allyship in bringing up this issue. So I appreciate wanting to connect with him, but I also don't know that that's like something that is going to be like his desired avenue towards resolution here.
Sure. Okay. that's
so
helpful.
he had written something that I read to this, he wanted me to read to the school committee, and they didn't blink an eye. And it's been brought up to the senator that's most involved in this, and he didn't blink an eye either. And I thought that he was, I thought that he was pro-Indigenous culture. So, so I don't really know that that's an avenue there. It is like him coming, Sagamore, speaking to that. What it does is it's saying it's just another supportive mention that it needs review.
Mhm.
And I'll totally get to that in just 1 minute about why it doesn't have review. So in July 2020, Mass Historical received the project notification form, which project notification form is what you have when you have a construction project. And then during the pandemic, Mass Historical staff are working from home. After 30 days, the window for review closed. As per protocol, the project was allowed to continue. Is that illegal? No. Could it have had better review? Yes. Should it have process because it has public money? Perhaps it should. There are 15 known Indigenous sites within 1 mile, 4 sites within 1/3 of a mile. Some of those pathways that I mentioned before in Breakheart, when the pathways were built, they destroyed sites. So it's likely to think that if it's that close to the school where sites could have been destroyed, then perhaps there could be more sites. And there are other sites in Breakheart that aren't going to be shown to anyone like us on a map, because if everyone knew where the sites were, they would no longer be protected. So being between 2 rivers, there's a lot of Indigenous sites found between 2 rivers. It's a pretty great place to live. There's felsight rock outcrops where people could have made tools. There's potter's clay deposits, steep streams, and just accessible water everywhere, more than 1,000 feet of wetlands. And the soil still has old growth root systems. So even if the trees were cut at some point, there were other trees that grew in their place. So you see these big bases in areas. Professional archaeologists have come forward who are licensed by the state, but they can't come forward publicly because they are licensed by the state, and it should be the state's responsibility to go over the land. And they have said, we really hope that this gets review. And I can give you links if you'd like to look around in the history. If you could go to the next one, that'd be great. So here's a project notification form. And this is just normal project notification form. It says where it's going to happen, what's going to happen, what people are going to do. It actually doesn't mention the forest, but it mentions athletic fields, roads, and parking lots. There'll be a new school and refurbished parking lots or refurbished athletic fields. The existing high school will be demolished. I don't know that it would have to mention a forest, but the next page is really what's of more concern. And then the question is, to the best of your knowledge, are any historic or archaeological properties known to exist within the project's area of potential impact? If so, specify. They answered no. Could the project architect who signed that form actually not have known? Maybe he didn't know. But there was a farm there before, and the building's 50 years old. Even the gates of the Wakefield entrance of Breakheart have historic significance and are listed. So, and that's just 3 items. And then Hemlock Road dates to the 1600s. So those all seem of historical significance. I wouldn't know, I'm not an archaeologist. And then if you could go to the next one. So now this is our safety stuff. So we're looking at what we've all heard about this ramp probably. This is what the ramp's going to look like. These are slides from the project when they presented to Wakefield Human Rights Commission. So on the left is a walkway. And so there's a lower student parking lot on the far right. And then you see this blue. So the blue is crossing a road, then zigzagging back across the hill, crossing another road, doing some more travel, and then getting to the school on the top on the far left side. And then this is what the ramp would look like on the right. So we have ramp through the woods where it's supposed to have lighting, and then it would definitely have to have top rail and bottom rail for spec, built out of wood. Perhaps it's a wood composite, not completely sure. And if you can go to the next one. And this is another version of what they're saying that it's going to look like. So ramps cross it. I think the ADA is every 30 feet, there's a landing. So you can see that there are flat spaces going up. This is one piece of it. And if you could go to the next one. From this viewpoint, I believe this is about a 50% view of the entirety of the ramp. And then we're going from 735 feet was the original. Disability commissions were concerned about that, and at this meeting on March 6th, which is available on WCAT with all the Wakefield meetings, is they have now moved to 800 to 1100 feet. If you can go to the next one. And here's more of our ramp through the woods. And you'll just go back one. So people are concerned about this because it creates a remoteness in an area that is already known to sometimes have issues with people taking advantage of people in vulnerable situations. The school has to watch out for people coming in through the woods to the property. So now the school is going to be in the woods itself. People are concerned this ramp is going to freeze. It's going to be hard for people to get up. 300 feet is a football field length, and this ramp, if it's 1100 feet long, that's many football fields of length. And then, like I said, the remoteness, and then that's just talking to public safety people and disability people. And when I mentioned it to a friend of mine who is able-bodied, he said, oh, that sounds like a Tony Hawk Pro Skater video. So I could imagine being teenagers and using it for other means too. My friend had said, is there a cool skate park near in that area? And I said no, and he said, well, there will be now. So that's another concern about what might happen with that sort of configuration. And then if you want to go to the next one. Oh yeah, and just to add, about 6 different disability commissions have really engaged with this, and not all towns have active disability commissions. So I think that's significant with 12 towns. And this is the road coming in. It's been in Conservation Commission since September. So it took them 6 months just to map the wetlands, I believe, prior to that. And then, so every month there's new drawings drawn up and they've moved the road over. But if you look, these pink lines and red lines are wetlands. So this road is coming straight in the middle between wetlands. People are concerned that that salting is going to be a problem because salt kills the wetlands. I'm sure that people have seen conversation about Lake Quannapowitt and the amount of salt that's in that. And then if it's, if it's not going to be salt, it would be a sand, which would then fill the wetlands. And then there's also a form of salt that's a little bit safer, but that would change the pH of the soil and so then affect trees. So it starts a slow tree die-off. And if you want to go to the next one. So this is more wetlands. You can see exactly, they have all different, some are jurisdictional, and some are not. So that's how many are actually involved. And they've been kind of, it's not the professional term, but according to just a resident viewer, it seems like they keep wedging the road a little bit to one side, a little bit to the other side, just trying to make it work in a difficult space. If you want to go to the next one. And people are also concerned about stormwater impacts on the neighborhood and on the residents and on the town, and whose responsibility is that going to be? So this is the clear and blast area from Gilbane. Gilbane's one of the largest construction companies probably in the world. And so this line that goes straight across the screen on the left-hand side is, that would be Farm Street. And then you can see off of that going into the forest is a road that's followed by Fs. So that would be the road coming in. And then this area that obviously looks like a building or structure, that would be the school. And they would be in the blasting, they would create 650-foot long cliff. So the school would be up 64 feet high on a cliff. And then the ways to get to the school are this road, which will be actually I think it's a driveway with variance because of how the zoning is. They have to do it that way. So you have this road coming in, forested areas on both sides. You have the school, you have a parking lot on top, you have a parking lot on bottom, and you have a road that goes from the lower parking lot to the top that's 9 to 10% grade of the road, no sidewalks, because you can't have it after 5%. And then to get down, there's that 9 to 10% road, graded road to get down. And then there's also this 800 to 1100 foot ramp to get down to the lower parking lot, or there's walking out on the road itself with the rest of the traffic. And the lack of ease of access to the building from different approaches that's a concern. And then I don't know if there's time to read archaeologist's letter. This is the towns that are going to be paying for it. And this is kind of the last slide. This is I wasn't gonna put that in there.
Where is the archaeologist letter? Is it attached to the end?
Yes, it's the it says Robley letter.
Can you see the letter or no?
I can.
Yeah, I can see it.
Okay.
Do you guys want to read it together, or do you want me to just read it? I can just read it.
Can you just describe what this is, where you got it, where it came from?
Where I got it. So
yeah.
There's an archaeologist named Patrick Robley who was born in Lynn and grew up in Saugus. And he's not licensed by the state, so he feels that he can talk about it. He works in Florida. And this is based on what he can see without having a mass license or being able to see sites, but just looking at the historical documents available through the Macris site that he mentioned. He concludes that that there seems to be enough things mentioned that perhaps it should have review. And he thinks that perhaps the only reason why someone thought that it wasn't historically sensitive is because they didn't look in all the places they could have looked. And here he mentions things in the letter, he mentions things in the database that anyone else in this room could also look up. And if you guys would like, if the Human Rights Commission would like those links, I can provide them.
Yeah, that would be helpful. And actually, so anything that we share, we sort of send off to the town as well. And so we can post them as part of our agenda. So thank you, Megan, for all of that. So I know, Megan, you and I have sort of talked, we've gone back and forth by email. I just want to make sure that I understand kind of clearly what the takeaway is for the HRC. Is it the request for us to follow up with the town council, with the committee? What are you sort of hoping that we'll do on behalf of you and other community members?
Well, we've been, resident advocates in multiple towns have been working to try to get these conversations going. I feel like maybe if this project didn't start in the heart of the pandemic, or not start, but if some of the process didn't take place in the heart of the pandemic, we might not be here right now. So how do we get those conversations going, and what are they? I know there's also going to be increased operating budgets to the town because the school is going to increase in size. So that might also be something that's coming before your councils. And then people are advocating on local and state levels about this. And the Wakefield Sustainability Committee had written a letter to the school. People are also welcome to write letters to the school building authority. Multiple disability commissions have done that. Malden just did it last week. So the advocacy is continuing. Some resident scientists wrote a MIPA petition to the state, to DEP and Office of Energy and the Environment, to try to get that review. And it's not just environmental review, but there's also a historical component. So Mass Historical may be triggered by that also. We hope that is the case. And if for some reason, if it's denied environmental review, we think it's probably not, it doesn't mean the area is not environmentally sensitive. It might mean that the state has determined that there won't be enough alteration of the land to require review. So there's certain thresholds. So it would still be a sensitive area. So if the Human Rights Commission feels that it should advocate for the environment and for the historical review, then if you would want to write a letter, I can give you a list of contacts that would be advocacy points.
It's helpful, thank you. And then do you know if anyone has talked to the Wakefield Historical Committee?
I think that some people have. I'm not sure what the outcome is. I know they don't meet regularly, and I know their next meeting is April 24th.
Okay, super helpful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Do any of the board members have questions for Megan, or go ahead, Benny? I can see you saying yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. Thanks for the presentation, Megan. Okay, a couple questions. One is, do you know what the timeline is for that MIPA review, like request thing that was filed? Like, when might MIPA be making a determination about that and things like that?
I think maybe possibly in the next week. And they've been reviewing comments and reviewing comments that were submitted and then accepting them. And there were multiple hundreds, at least so far, that have been submitted. Anyone who submitted them.
And so my other question is, so you said that whatever it was, some kind of request or some kind of paperwork was sent for historical review. The review period lapsed, and so no review happened. Do you know of any avenue within the bureaucracy to get that review to happen, or is the MIPA avenue like really the way to try to get a historical review?
There may be you're right, it may get triggered through MIPA, through Mass Historical's relationship to MIPA, but there may also be an appeal, and I'm not sure. And it would be really great to engage the historical commissions about that, especially Wakefield Historical Commission, because I'm sure they would know more. I'm sure it's not the first time that Wakefield's dealt with a project in a sensitive area. And it's a good learning experience too, because there's a lot of land that hasn't been developed there people are seeking to develop right now. And so there's a lot of indigenous concerns I think that we're going to see coming up in years to come, especially with solar and wind development, which I completely support, but it's just happening on land that hasn't been touched yet.
Yeah, I mean, certainly for me, kind of where I'm seeing this project from a human rights perspective, the indigenous history of the land is the biggest one. And actually, it's not only the indigenous history of the land, but it's what I was saying a couple of minutes ago. I think it's both the historical aspect, you know, if you consider, like, if we bring into the room here a perspective on land, like from an indigenous standpoint, and I'm like certainly not an indigenous person, but like trying to center an indigenous viewpoint in which land is not just property, right? Land is a relation. Land is like a part of your culture, a part of your family. So I think honoring that history and honoring that worldview is really essential to being a supporter of Indigenous people. So I would love to be able to lend support where we can to both protect the like historical significance of those spaces, but also in doing that support like current day Indigenous communities. You know, if the Massachusetts people are saying this is an area of significance to us, you know, I think it then falls to us to you know, to act in allyship with that. So I would say I would love for the HRC to like get behind that, doing, you know, writing a letter, doing whatever it would look like to try to get a historical review.
Thanks, Penny. Danielle, I can see your hand up. I just wanted to let community members know that in the beginning of our meeting, we had sort of open community member public participation for 3 minutes. And so we've actually shut that down at this point, which is pretty typical. We've moved on to another agenda. And now the committee itself is discussing Megan's presentation that she's just completed. So Daniela, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask the community members that were speaking if I have the full picture, right? Because I was trying to jot down the different things that they were listing, and in regards to how it would relate to us. And I agree with Benny, you know, there's a big part of it that is around Indigenous land and not calling upon people of that community to come out and do the time and the work and the potential damage to, you know, say, hey, can you please recognize this? But having us play the role of an advocate to sort of help and lend that communication. But I am also hearing, in addition to that, a few other points, you know, there's the disability concern, like the ramp, the weather safety, the lighting, etc. The fact that this is supposed to be super accessible, yet completely disregarding the world's largest minority population. 15% of the world's population is disabled, and 70% of those disabilities are invisible. So that could even mean asthma, anxiety, PTSD. So if someone is a survivor of an abuse, and perhaps that was done in a woods, maybe having to go through that walk path isn't going to be fantastic of an experience. I'm also seeing here the protection part, you know, the protection of people that are having to go through this experience as far as going up the ramp specifically is what I'm hearing. I'm not sure if there was any other protection parts of this. I've, you know, did listen to the Disability Commission's call, and they did mention security as far as security cameras, call boxes for police. If anything were to happen, would someone be able to reach one of those call boxes fast enough? But then there was the concern of, well, if it's a group of people, then they could just as easily have someone standing right there, avoiding someone from accessing that call box. So then the third thing, well, fourth, because Indigenous land was definitely first one, this preservation of human environment connection, which includes also the protection of endangered species. Last summer, the UN General Assembly unanimously voted that a clean, healthy, and sustainable environment is a human right. So there is now a connection between human rights and the environment. So that's where I can see that, but I wouldn't say that for the Human Rights Commission, that's the first step that we would take, is just to talk about the environment. I think that's why I agree with Benny, where we would take our leading step with the Indigenous land. And then there's also, and I don't even know how to word this appropriately, but the right for transparency and to weigh in on the discussions, the fact that community members have been speaking up, they've had a signed petition of at least 6,000 signatures, the fact that they're having to go from different towns, each different commissions, and they're talking about this and they're calling on so much help. You know, that's where, you know, the right to democracy, I mean, I don't even know what to call that, but there's obviously some injustice here that is very clear of the lack of transparency in the utter I would say offense that to claim that this has been a super transparent project, when if it was transparent, then people wouldn't be so loud right now. They are definitely being heard, but I don't think they're being listened to. So it's kind of also, just as much as we could be an advocate for the anybody with an Indigenous background, but also anyone who's just feeling like they can't even be heard in a public setting. And then this was a stretch, but increased operational budgets. I'm not sure if that's necessarily something that would be something that we could even throw in the mix, but, you know, I had thought maybe, you know, what's the increased tax impact on low income families? People who can already barely afford to the cost of living. So if the cost goes up, but I do believe that there is a protection on that. Like after a certain threshold, if the cost goes up, that isn't on the residents. I believe that's what we just recently voted on, something similar on that. So in summary, did I get that right? So the concerns are Indigenous land, the preservation of the human environment connection, protecting endangered species, protection security of individuals from potential abuse, disability concerns, and the right to transparency and to weigh in on political discussions. So I think that was 5.
And protection of water.
Yes, yeah, so that I include that with the preservation of the human environment connection, because that's just, I mean, that's the land, that's the water, that's all the implications that would come with building and then also treating for conditions for winter. So I don't know if Paul was going to answer.
Well, I just wanted to say you did a spectacular job. And the way you said the United Nations, that's really important, because a basic human right to have a clear, sustainable, and clean environment is going to be seriously jeopardized with the blasting that's going to terrorize kids for a long period of time. It really doesn't have to happen either.
Oh, sorry. One thing we didn't mention either is that they didn't have a disability stat slide, but a large percentage of people that go to the voc are disabled, or they might learn differently, or they might have a 504 IEP plan. So I spoke with the fire chief the other day, and Chief Sullivan is back, and he said, I could imagine, I shouldn't quote him in the meeting actually, so I won't, but I would say that having lived near blasting, I will change it to myself, having lived near blasting, there are horns that are blown. And then after that, even though they have these blast pads on, the vibrations can be really significant. So the amount of construction on the forest site will be really significant. It was said that on one of the other sites, it might be less so. And they'll have Wakefield High School going at the same time. I couldn't imagine learning in that environment.
Daniela, you said that you watched, I didn't have a chance to watch the link that you sent, the recording of the Disability Commission meeting where they discussed this recently, but what is there, because do they have an actual role, an official role in the way I don't know, the development goes forward, the permitting or whatever, like the Conservation Commission has this kind of like specific bureaucratic role. Does the Disability Commission have a role like that? Or is it more like us where they kind of can like, you know, lend support or whatever, you know, they can kind of decide to voice their opinion, but they don't necessarily have a specific role in the process? What's the deal with the Disability Commission in this?
Yeah, it seemed like that there is a disability advisory board that is part of the construction. I'm not sure who these members are. So there's the Wakefield Commission on Disabilities. And so they were saying, okay, let's come up with a letter of recommendations. And that letter or different letters would be going to different or relevant parties. So that would be the Disability Advisory Board. There is also a safety board. And then there were conversations about the Wakefield Traffic Advisory Board because of a Rotary or something nearby. So it seemed to me that they do not play a formal role just as much as we do not. And all that we could do is, and that's where I'm trying to understand, okay, so these are the concerns. Now I'm trying to see, okay, well then what can we do? Because basically what we can do is write, and I don't even know, it'd be a public letter, submitting it to Steve Mayo, I don't know where we would put that. And what are we calling for? You know, do we want to call for the the Disability Advisory Board to include members from different communities here? Do we want the safety board to include, have some more public input? Do we want to call for a location vote? I don't even know if that's even possible. So that's where it was super helpful, Megan. Thank you for specifically laying out that we could call for a historical as well as environmental review, and perhaps we word that request of follow it up by regardless of thresholds. So that way there is no loophole that we are just saying, please just take a look at it. Whether it could be potentially indigenous land or there are endangered species that do not, that needlessly need to be disturbed. So this is where my fellow members who have more historical knowledge of like town commissions may be able to help me understand like what can we even do?
Teresa, Jeremy, Elizabeth, what do you guys think? Anything? Sherry? Anything you want to add? Sherry, you're on mute.
I'm looking at the much diminished size of our commission and wondering, do we even have the bodies to work on this at this point?
I mean, I think writing a letter doesn't take a lot.
Right.
I think it's an easy lift.
I mean, beyond writing a letter, I know I just wrote a letter advocating for another group that was looking for a grant. Beyond writing a letter, though, how much ability do we have to have any effect at all?
Jeremy, were you going to add something?
I was just gonna, I've been listening back here, and the point I truly agree with, that the Human Rights Commission has a role in this is with the Indigenous people's connection. So I think in the interest of moving forward, we should decide whether or not we want to, investigate this part of it further. I know Benny had made some suggestions about, trying to figure out this connection. The environmental aspect, although I don't deny the human right aspect of it, I don't think it's our commission at the moment. I think Wakefield has an environmental commission that looks into this. The access thing obviously is related to our commission. But I think the real big one is the indigenous peoples connection. So I would be on board with, you know, at least putting a letter in support of having this looked at further, and go from there, or have a subcommittee of us look into, you know, how we can go forward with this. But in the interest of the time and stuff moving forward, that's just my recommendation on it.
Yeah. So should we do a couple things? Should we ask to have kind of a small subcommittee work together to put together a letter that does go to the town council, maybe the school committee, in addition to the Metro Voc? Do we start there? Is that the number one? And then in that subcommittee, you can, like we've done with other things, sort of create the letter and then maybe come up with some other ideas about how to approach it. Does that make sense?
I'm wondering about I think that idea is a good one, but one concern I have is timeliness for this MIPA review thing. Like that to me sounds like the point where there is greatest leverage, like writing a letter to the NEMT building committee, fine, but I don't have a lot of hope that they are going to respond to those kinds of letters that they've been getting. Whereas the MIPA review, like if that review is triggered, you know, that's an external review. I feel like an external review is something that could be really valuable. And if there's leverage to be put that would make that external review happen, I think that's the like strongest place to put our effort. But it sounds like that might have a little bit of a like more urgent timeline, unclear when they might make a decision on that review. And so I would want to be able to submit a letter to, there's like a thing you can do where you can like make a comment right on the MIPA review like application or whatever that paperwork was that went in. Is that what you're thinking, Megan? Is that we would write a letter and like submit it as a public testimony for that MIPA review thing?
Well, the period for public comment through the portal, I believe, is closed. You can always write to DP, Office of Energy Environment. I have a short list. People that are also like Mass Historical, sorry, I got a train. Mass Historical is also Secretary Galvin. And we've been definitely advocating to administration level. It depends on how far you guys want to go. I mean, so people who are in charge of like all these reviews are at some point, you know, pretty close to the top of the Mass administration structure. So like Mass School Building Authority, they're like Deb Goldberg is the state treasurer and oversees that. So that's how close you are to the top of the administration. Or like Melissa Hoffer has been a really great climate advocate and she's just getting her cabinet off the ground, or Bill Galvin oversees Mass Historical. Definitely this project, like I know just from working in nonprofits at a point and working with grants and stuff, I would always, if I had a consideration, I would always, and Sherry mentioned grants earlier, like I would possibly consider writing a letter of recommendation to the grant maker, which would be Mass School Building Authority. And it is taxpayer money, so it should have public process. And people are also encouraged to advocate on this, I think, from the communities, because we've seen that Mass School Building Authority has worked with communities to make projects more acceptable to the community, whether it's something about the building or something about the land. And I can send you an article, a really great article from one of the patches that has a list of all these different ones where community input was accepted. I think that part of this situation is it's sort of a jurisdictional hot potato, right? Because it's 12 towns and an independent school district and all these different things. But yeah, so the school building funder is probably a key advocate. Disability commissions have been writing to them too. The school committee, you know, it's probably good for Steve Mayo and the council to hear it too. I think city councils like aren't quite sure how to talk about it. And I did bring up the operating costs because it is something that is a way that a council would engage on it, right, on budget matters. So if you want me to send you a list of email addresses, I would love to do that. And you can choose where you want to send to.
Thank you. Just a reminder to community members, in the beginning of our meeting, we had public participation. We gave everyone sort of an opportunity for 3 minutes to speak. That's actually passed now. And so we're sort of focusing and responding to Megan's presentation. So thank you, Megan, so much for doing that.
Thank you so much. And if the Human Rights Commission too wants to, join the larger conversation that's going on with the disability commissions, and I can definitely include you in that or keep you in the loop on where that is. And I know that Melrose Human Rights Commission was excited that you guys are talking about it, and they want to talk about it some more too. If we happen to get this review, there will be some more time involved. And they have offered to talk at their next meeting, so you guys would be welcome to come to that also. That's April. And then tomorrow night, Zoning Board of Appeals, Wakefield, 7 p.m. on Zoom, and you can also email them. They are going to see if this is going to be a hardship for the school. So if the school has no other place to put this, no other way to do the road, and if the building height is acceptable, and if it is not a hardship for the school, then the board might not pass.
That's great. Thank you so much. Thanks for putting the time into this as well.
Thanks so much for having me.
Okay. So
if we were to write a letter, Eileen, I feel like this is a question I should know the answer to, but I still don't really feel like I grasp it totally. Would we have to then bring the letter back to the commission at our next meeting in April to have the letter approved before we can send it?
I think so, which is similar to sort of the way that we've written the land acknowledgement too, right? I think you and I put it together and then we brought it in and had a discussion about it. I can confirm that though, but I'm pretty sure that that's how we have to do it. We could do sort of a subcommittee meeting, right? Like this week, if you wanted, a couple of people get together, write the letter, and then we could do like an emergency meeting, which we've done. We just have to give them 72 hours to post the agenda, have enough people here to vote on it.
Or isn't it possible that if it states like from the subcommittee or from these members of the HRC versus signed by the entire commission, then that's the loophole?
Let's find out. Let's confirm that. Yeah. If I'm guessing that Benny and Daniela are the subcommittee. But yeah, right. So if you guys want to get together, and then in the meantime, I'll email Sherry and just confirm that that's something that we can do. And if that's the case, then we sort of move forward from there.
Yeah, and I would have no problem getting on for a quick meeting to approve it if that's needed. I mean, that's
Yeah.
That'd be like a 10-minute thing, hopefully. So no problem.
Right. Yeah. Everyone take some time to read the letter before you jump on the call. and then we could probably approve it pretty quickly. So I don't think we have to vote to create a subcommittee. That's right? No. Okay. Benny or Daniela, do you want to reach out to Sherry? Is anyone else joining? Jeremy, Teresa, anyone else interested in joining? It's just the two of them. Okay.
Do you want us to reach out to Sherry about this question of like approving the letter?
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah.
And then in the meantime, sort of scheduling time for you guys to get together. Okay. Great. Thanks everyone for joining and talking through all of that. I'm going to move on to other agenda items. So if anyone is interested in staying, you're welcome to. Don't feel like you have to, but of course you're welcome to. I'm jumping around here a little bit, but for Martin Luther King Day of Service, we've had 2 horrible wintry days. And so I'm working with Evan Ruppert to find a couple more days. We'd love to have community members be involved. So if anyone is interested in coming and helping us to paint the mural at the Boys and Girls Club, There is a sign up out on our Facebook page, and we can recirculate it to anyone that's part of our distribution list as well. I can see there's a lot of community members here today. If you're not already on our distribution list, please email us at whrc@wakefield.ma.us, and we can add you to our distribution list, and then we can recirculate that sign up genius. But third time's the charm. Hopefully we get a day where it's nice and it's not storm. Maybe a quick recap, Sherry, on the amazing work of the International Women's Day event and the great success from that. You want to give a couple minutes on it?
Very briefly, we had the most amazing panel. At the last minute, one of our panelists didn't need to drop out, our youngest panelist. But the women that were there were phenomenal. And I hope you have some time to view it if you haven't seen it already, because it was recorded by WCAT. I also had the most wonderful group of volunteers. I want to do a special shout out to Vanessa Westlake from the Youth Council for bringing in a large group of friends. And I've written thank yous to all of these people. It appeared the next day or 2 days later on the front page of the item with a picture of the panel. So it was very publicized. One of the things that we did that we have not done in the past is we actually kept a count. And I think that going forward for all of our events, we should keep a count of how many people are participating, because I think this is also tied in with any kind of budget request we might have to make.
How many people, Sherry, were there?
Including my volunteers, I had 50, which is not huge, but we're still during a time when people are concerned about coming out to a large group setting, even though there's lots and lots of room in that theater. The audience was highly engaged, asked lots of questions, shared lots of personal anecdotes and experiences. And then just about everybody stayed afterwards for cookies and apple cider. So we had more discussion after. And I had my sister and her friend put together a women empowerment playlist. And if anybody would like a copy of that playlist, I can burn a CD for you, because unfortunately it's not an MP5. They're all individual MP3 files, and they're not consolidated into one that I can just send that. But I did, as a gift, give each of our speakers a copy of that CD, because there's some great music on it.
Sherry, would you email us the list of all of the songs? I bet there's a way for us to share each individual song on Facebook or something like that, right?
Yeah.
Like from the IWD playlist or something. That would be kind of fun.
And like I said, the music spans all generations and genres, and starts with Helen Reddy, I'm a Woman, and ends with Respect by Aretha Franklin, and lots of stuff in between. But like I said, I recommend that we always try to keep a count. Just, all it needs to be is our list of events that we've had and for each year. And then at the end of the year, we have a sort of a summary and say, okay, this event was 50. I know we didn't get a count at MLK Day. And again, we didn't have the greatest weather that day either. And people, again, might have been a little bit hesitant to come out in a group. But going forward, and I can get a count for Hispanic Heritage because I have photographs of the whole event, and I know all the discrete people in the room. And I think we probably had about 50 people over the course of that event as well. So that's my recommendation, that we all start keeping counts when we do our particular special events.
That's great. Thank you for all of the work that you did with that. It was impressive and really well done.
Okay, and I will, my to-do will be send out the playlist.
That's a great to-do. All right. Do you want to talk, this is still you, Sherry. Do you want to talk a little bit about APAH planning?
Well, I've just caught my breath after International Women's Day. Other than the two mothers from the community who have assisted me the last few years, there's no one else on the commission involved with this. And I know we have some new members who I have not met, who have not had their orientation. And I don't
Yeah,
see
they
them
haven't been
here
sworn in
tonight.
either.
They haven't.
Yeah, that's part
Okay.
of it as well. So we're pushing for them to be sworn in. And then we also received, I know this is kind of off topic, but we also received a couple of other applications this week.
Good.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
we've definitely got some interest, which is
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
if at all possible, I'd like to encourage our newest members to get their feet wet by being involved with this event. Because right now, I'm the only one from the commission, and there really needs to be more involvement from commissioners, not just one, but others as well. So, and I don't have their contact information, the new people.
So why don't I introduce you directly? I think there's at
Okay.
least one that will probably want to be involved. So if you want to add that to my to-do list,
Mhm.
I can introduce you. And I know that we reached out to Melrose and Reading, and I
Mhm.
don't remember what Sudeshna said from Reading.
I did do the same,
Okay,
and they were excited. The only difficulty, and I've had this conversation with when I went to the Melrose event, the concert, is that everybody would like to have whatever happens happen in their community, be presented in their community.
Yeah.
And so if we did a series of events, we could spread it around to different communities. But if it's only one big event, everyone's going to want it in their own town. And that's the only issue when you have, various people working together. I am concerned that I looked at the American calendar, where it's full. And that's the biggest space in town to present anything. So I will call a meeting shortly if you can introduce me to the new commissioners and the moms who've been waiting. My wonderful Cheyenne and Winnie, they're fantastic. And I do have some ideas. And now that we have a little money because we have a grant, we can actually afford to have some entertainment that last year we could not have.
yeah, maybe you try and, I don't know if anybody else agrees, but maybe you try and call a meeting sooner rather than later with a couple of moms and talk through like these challenges specifically. And maybe there's a little bit of a change in direction when it comes to the size of the event from last year. I don't know, based on like your own capabilities, right?
Yeah, they have been emailing me for the last 8 or 9 months.
Yeah.
Pretty regularly. So, okay, well, it's time to start.
It's great.
Okay.
Thank you for that. Both Pride and Juneteenth are sort of listed together specific to the flag. And so I put together a letter, I sent it to Steve Mayo. The thought is obviously that we raise the Pride flag on June 1st. It comes down on the 15th. We raise the Juneteenth flag on the 15th. That stays until the 23rd. And then we take the Juneteenth down and we bring the Pride flag back up. I'm told that they're adding an additional pole to the Civic Center in order to facilitate that. And I am going to try and go to the town council on Monday, I think, to do sort of a full request of it, but I've already sent it along to Steve Mayo. So that piece is moving forward. And we've sent the invoice to Sherry Dalton to pay the Juneteenth committee as well. So Nicole, is there anything that I'm forgetting there?
Nope, that sounds like it all. We're just waiting to see if if they put the flagpole in there, got approval. Representative Kate Lipper Garabedian has agreed to be the to speak. So we'll see.
Great. Should we also start working on a Pride subcommittee or like we've done in the past? And are there any volunteers that are interested in working on that? Okay, will you think about it? Will you think about it?
I mean, I'm always interested, but my capacity gets really slim at the end of the church year. So it's hard for me to say like, yes, you can count on me. I would love to be involved, but I don't think I'm super reliable at that time of year.
That's okay, totally get it. I will work on pulling some people together for the flag raising. And then as we have new members join, hopefully in the next couple weeks, we can pull those people together and if they're interested, create a subcommittee for another event within Pride Month. Great.
I think it probably will be important to have a continuing commissioner chairing that. You know, I think it would really be hard for all new commissioners to be in charge of an event because there's like so many like logistics and things like how do you do the venue request? How do you do the this, the that, things that like we teach one another as we go, you like when newer people come on. So yeah, May is the end of my term. So I will not be on the subcommittee, but I encourage, anybody who is a continuing member of the commission, we will need somebody if we plan to have a Pride event.
Perhaps.
That reminds me then, I guess, for Juneteenth as well, because mine ends next month.
There was going to be so much turnover this spring. I think that anybody who's been the lead on a major event, like Eileen, you were lead on MLK Day, really needs to write a bunch of bullet points and a summary of how someone can proceed, because I don't think ideally that we're going to have necessarily someone who is experienced available.
Yeah.
To work
So
on some of
I'm
these
starting
events.
to think about that separately of kind of the things that I've seen over the past year anyway.
Yeah.
I'm hoping to help with the Pride subcommittee as much as possible because it's important to me. So I'd like to still be involved if I can. So I'll still sort of stick with that. I may not be at these meetings as often, but I'll do my best to kind of get involved with the Pride subcommittee. I do think, to Sherry, Benny, Elizabeth, everybody's point, like, I think a how-to of where to go, who to call, introductions to people, I think is super important as we think about that stuff. So
Yeah, because I have that generic thing I've put together for everybody on program planning and people to contact, but there's certain things for specific events that are a little bit different. And I think it's really important that we all leave behind in writing our instructions so that the work has continuity and continues.
right.
I'll also say that, none of us are, gonna like move to the moon or whatever. So if something is going on and there's some like question like, oh my gosh, how did they do this last year? I'm not sure what, I will say for myself, everybody should always feel free to reach out if you have a question.
I think I'll be living on the moon though, Benny.
I mean, it sounds peaceful, doesn't it?
Good choice, Nicole. I'll be your only neighbor.
Is there cell reception there? Because I'm totally going with you if there's zero cell reception.
This is getting crowded, y'all. No.
All right, so another topic that's not listed on here is that progression of people moving off of the board and new people coming on. And so we've got a whole bunch of people moving off. And I'm going to try and get to everyone over the next couple of weeks just to talk about what your plans are. And I will also reach out to the new applicants for the board and the new committee members that we've asked to join and haven't seen yet. And so I'll do some of that over the next couple of weeks so that we get people here. And then I think our next meeting, I think it's April, is when we vote on chair and co-chair and treasurer, right? Is it April? Do we wait till May?
I think it's May because I think the new commissioners' terms start in May and they get to vote for the chair and stuff.
Okay.
I mean, not the commissioners who just recently were appointed, but the new ones who are like the person who will fill my seat, the person who will fill, like those new people will
So
come
it's
in May.
Okay. I
And,
over and
and I
over.
would encourage each one of you who are leaving us to come and be public participants in that May meeting so that you can, happen to chime in. Even though you're not supposed to, you might happen to chime in while we're doing that stuff just in case we need you. No, but you guys should all be there for that to give your public comments on your roles, in the first 3 minutes or whatever. So.
Yeah, maybe we hang in the background just to make sure everyone feels okay. Okay. We did not approve the minutes from February, and I am slacking a little bit because I'm not even sure I sent them. Did I send them? Did you get them?
I might have sent them right after the meeting ended. Did I send an email? Oh, hold on, let me look. Because I think I took the notes last time. But I don't think you sent us a packet, Eileen, like leading up to this meeting, but everybody should have gotten the notes from last time.
You are right.
Yes, it was at
So-
8:21 p.m., February 21st.
Is everyone comfortable voting on the minutes, or do you want to push it off a month so you get time to read it?
I will admit I haven't read it yet and I'd like to.
Okay, let's wait a month. We could do it in April. No worries. Anything that we didn't have a chance to talk about that you'd like to talk about?
I have a question for all of us in general. Have we talked about burnout at all? I know that I wasn't here last month.
I like that we all sort of giggled as you said that.
I'm asking because I noticed, and I know that I had something last month that I couldn't be present here, but our numbers have really dwindled and we have lost people who have joined more recently, and now we have people timing out. And we have done a lot, and we have done a lot for the past couple of years. And I find myself questioning whether our level of activity and programming is sustainable. I appreciate that we really, really want to sort of be a space that creates space for everyone. And I am one of the things that I tell like the social action committee, for example, at my church, is that if we try to take on every issue that we believe in, we can spin our wheels constantly 24/7 and still not get enough done. And I think we are overcommitted as a committee, and that as we move into next year, and so this isn't really a thing we make a decision about now, right? But as we move into next year, I would like to encourage us to think about how frequently we can continue to offer programming to make it sustainable so that committee members don't drop off because this is too much for a volunteer position.
So Elizabeth, I mean, obviously everybody got my email today in regards to.
I was thinking it before you sent that, and then I was like,
I'm stepping down. And I will say, I really love the work that we do. I love it so much. And I love working with all of you. Between a full-time job, this, and a very active teenager living in my home, it feels like too much. And I have also like seen that other communities have a dedicated DEI manager or DEI person that, is either part of the library or part of the town council or whatever it happens to be. And that's a full-time job. And they put on the same number of events that we do. And so I've mentioned that to town council members in the past to say, like, look, this is, I mean, Sherry, putting together the IWD stuff, right? Like getting out to the people, or Juneteenth or Hispanic Heritage Month. Like it's a significant amount of work. And You
I
want
don't
to
raise
be
my
able to
hand for the June
include
events.
everyone, but it's so much.
I don't raise my
advocate
hand
for
for
them to
June.
hire someone, honestly. Sorry, Carrie. I would say, like, if they could hire someone for the town to do this work, and we could be board members that add value in a different way and volunteer when we can, it's a different story than the amount of work. Elizabeth, to your point. I'm sorry, Sherry, I didn't mean to jump on you. Go ahead.
No, I jumped on you. You know, what you just said is like, after I do IWD and then the Asian Pacific Islander, after that, like, I'm done until Hispanic Heritage in the fall. And you know that I am available for every time we have a table to staff or we're called upon for something public. Because I do not have a teenager at home, although my husband sometimes could be considered such. And I'm now on the Commission for Aging too, the Council for Aging. Because I'm not busy enough being a retired person. But there is a lot, and it's very frustrating when there isn't anybody else on the commission who's really available to work with you on these things. You can have all the great community volunteers, but they don't have the same level of commitment when they raise their hand to be on a subcommittee that someone who is actually on the commission. So this is a big issue. I would hate to have any less than the major events, but I'd say we can't add any. And that's why I even had hesitation about taking on the whole issue of the vote. I mean, there's just so much people can do. We do a lot in the springtime. Well, from January through June is super busy with the special events.
I do think that the vote is not, I mean, we're not standing out in the rain and picketing, right? I mean, I think if we're writing a letter to the community, then it feels like a little less, right? We're not planning an event. So that feels like the advocacy is a little bit different there, but yeah, Elizabeth, I feel ya.
I mean, I will say, I think we have too much programming throughout the year. Not that we have too much programming for the town. People are interested and attend, but I don't think we have the capacity to do the level of programming that we do. And I say that because every single time we are looking for people to sit on a subcommittee, we struggle. There are not enough people. People do not have the capacity. There is no time. We're looking at going into like an AAPI event with only one person. And this isn't because people don't value these things. It is because this committee, we are asking too much of each other. This isn't sustainable. We are going to burn out new members. And we are burning one another and each other and ourselves out. And so I really think as we move into spring, one of the things we need to look at is we need to pare down programming. We have set some really great programming in process. And if somebody from our wider community wants to take it and do something and run with it in an unofficial capacity, I think that's great, but we are doing too much for volunteers and we are asking too much of this commission.
Yeah, good. I think Daniela was first and then Jeremy.
Yeah, I just want to say thanks for calling it out, because that's definitely the case for me. I mean, and I think we just gotta address the elephant in the room. And so having this as a discussion, figuring out, okay, how do we organize ourselves moving forward? Because it's a self-made group. This didn't exist, what, 6 years ago, 7 years ago? And then we kind of got going and we're like, hey, this is what we think we should be doing, which was all great when it was said and then done, but then it was done, and then the bar kept on being raised, and then it was like, all right, well, now we're going to change over. And so, even increasing, I think this is just something we could all think about and bring to the next meeting, especially those who are leaving, is just like, okay, well, what could have been better, and like, how else could we operate? Is there something that we can formally ask the town council? Is there something that, a formal partnership that we could have? Someone who's like, instead of a subcommittee for each event, you know, could there be someone who goes and has a relationship with a nearby town HRC? And can we partner more? Can we outsource anything if we have increased budget? But you know, I think it's definitely something to call out and do more than just see that it's here, that it's present, but to like, you know, have an action afterwards, a follow-up to sort of respond to it.
That's helpful.
Yeah, that exactly. And you know, that's honestly why I put so much into the social media, just because like that was easy for me to do. That's also another thing is, you know, you have to think about neurodivergency, right? So the way that my mind works in the way that my lifestyle is, it's a lot easier for me to do things like the social media and kind of do it in batches and you know, work independently, whereas other people, their minds and the way that they work may be better suited for like collaboration and meetings and working live, you know. So there's also the variances of the ways of working. And so it may need to change a little bit or be flexible to whoever the commission members are and whoever can come out in the public and help.
Jeremy. Oh, we can't hear you.
Yeah, just want to point out one thing, you know, and I agree with Daniela about outsourcing, but remember the comment that was made earlier tonight that we don't want to have an event happen in another town, right? So we got to get over that stigmatism if we're gonna, you know, I totally agree. We should partner with other HRCs in the area and, you know, don't be afraid to encourage residents of Wakefield to go to Reading, to go to an event that we co-sponsor just because it's in Reading. So, I mean, it will take a huge burden off the committee going forward if we partner with other places when the opportunity is right. You know, if it's a baby that you know, if it's something that we've done from the start and we really have a lot of you know, saying it and want to have it here in Wakefield, that's one thing. But you know, for new things and things like that, it makes sense to partner and jump on board with other people that are interested in the same thing. So, you know, maybe that's one way to not have such burnout going forward. So.
Yeah, the Melrose HRC and the Reading DEI team are willing, right? And maybe the partnership for us is we're donating cookies for their event, right? I mean, there's certainly ways for us to coordinate with them. Benny, I think you were next.
Oh, I just wanted to ask Eileen, what did you said you had asked Steve or asked some people on the town council or something about this question of having a staff person whose job this is, like what they have in Reading with Sadeshna? What did they say?
Something that they had considered in the past, but that was it. I mean, it's, you know, it's understandable when you have like an active working group of volunteers that put on a whole bunch of awesome events throughout the year and are passionate about it. I can see.
I mean, there could be some advocacy for us to do, you know, to kind of like share our experiences and like describe what it's like to be doing this work as volunteers. You know, kind of shine a light on that a little bit, maybe would be good.
Maybe we add that to our agenda for our next meeting and have Maureen come, and maybe we could even invite Steve Mayo and see if he could sort of listen in, and we spend 20-25 minutes talking about like how passionate and how much we love these events and how important they are, but how much time it does take, and that we, you know, would like to advocate to have someone from the town be a dedicated. I mean, there's other things that we're not doing, right? Like there's like what other diversity involved choices is the town making when it comes to hiring, right? Like what's happening in our police departments. Like, I mean, they're all like great institutions and organizations, but there's a whole bunch of other things that we're just not involved in, that if there was a dedicated person in the town working on that, then it's more than just throwing a pride parade. It's actually thinking about inclusion within town and how to bring, you know, more diverse community members and hiring more diverse individuals. And there's a whole bunch of things that we're just not getting to. So Sherry, how about you? I would just also would like to remind everyone that it's 5 minutes of 9.
The only thing I wanted to say is Daniela has done this fabulous job with our social media.
Phenomenal.
But she's an example of someone with such amazing specific skills. If she's not on the commission, who does that? Eileen, you have been doing all of the distribution of the emails. We've been giving you names and collecting names, and you've been putting the list together. But if you're not doing that, who's going to be doing that? So we also have to think about continuity of our basic functions when we have changes over of people, not just our events.
Yeah. All right. Well, we got another topic for next month. Elizabeth, thanks for bringing that topic up. I was trying to pretend it didn't exist, but thank you very much. Okay, cool. Well, Sherry, do you want to review the action list?
Well, it actually is not that long. Because we spent a great deal of time on the voc issue. Let's see, starting with a subcommittee will form with Daniela and Benny with assistance from Jeremy to reach out to Sherry Dalton about the process of approving a letter so they can start writing the letter about our feelings relative to the citing of the voc. Let's see, I'm going to send you all the playlist from International Women's Day. Eileen is going to introduce the new commissioners to me so we can try to encourage them to work on subcommittees. Eileen is going to be in touch with each of us who are eligible to continue about our intentions for the coming year. And that basically, I don't know if we're going to, it's a formal to do that we want to ensure that the town manager and someone like Maureen from the town council is at our next meeting so that we can address this whole issue of sustainability and burnout.
Yeah, I'll invite them. I can do that.
Okay, so I put that as a to-do.
Okay. Cool. Thanks everyone
Okay.
for all that you do. Thank you, really. I appreciate it. And we'll see you next month. So does someone want to make a motion to end the meeting?
A motion to adjourn.
Second?
Second.
Yeah.
Okay, Sherry?
Yes.
Annie?
Sure.
Daniela?
Yes.
Teresa?
Yes.
Elizabeth?
Yes.
Jeremy?
Yes.
Nicole?
Yes.
Meeting adjourned. Thanks everyone. Thanks Megan for joining. Have a good night.
Thank
Good
you.
night, all.
Sorry it was
Bye.
so long. Thanks.